I'm not gonna let you go. You are the fire blazing through my wild blood. I'm feeling ready, ready for the hot rush. Your hand clenching mine in the ocean deep. My soul feeling light in your gravity. Come float away with me. I'll be everything you need. We'll find the sunshine. I'm not gonna let you go. I could be a star in the midnight sky. Let me be a spark. I'll give you all my heart. You could be my sun, burning up the night until our days are done. I'll give you all my heart. I'm not gonna let you go.
Hey there! Thank you so much for joining in on the very special virtual exhibition of Better For It. My name is Marcus. I'm an artist and designer based here in Austin, Texas. And I'm also the proud owner of a garage. Whenever I bought this house, it was always a dream of mine to turn this space into a place where it could showcase up-and-coming voices who shed light and hope in the world. But of course, with COVID, not allowed to have people in tight spaces together. And so this garage idea couldn't work now. But I think it became something a lot better by being able to create this online experience that the entire world could see. And so I decided to ask some artists and friends about how they've been able to see hope and light in these present dark times. I want to know how artists were utilizing this time to reflect, to pivot, and to offer new perspectives. And these artists delivered. We had over a dozen artists from around the world submit their works to the show. To talk a little bit more about the curatorial process, here's my good friend and co-curator, Meg Venkatesh.
Hi everyone, I'm Meg, and I am a freelance designer based out of New York City. I work mostly in interiors and film sets, but I have experience in everything from creative marketing to art curation and art direction. So I was extremely excited when Marcus, my good friend, invited me to come curate this gallery show with him. And I just want to quickly say a big thank you to all of the artists that are in this show. Thank you for your hard work, and thank you to everyone watching for being here tonight. I think it's going to be really exciting what we have coming up. And yeah, I just want to talk quickly about the process of curating the artwork for this show. I think as a designer, I focus primarily on the visual and emotional sort of conceptual side of each of the work. I think that I'm looking for a refined aesthetic from the artist that goes hand in hand with their intent and what they're visually trying to say through their work, and is that ultimately achieved. So I'm evaluating everything from technical skill to what is it offering me, to how does the viewer sort of engage with this piece of work, and how does that tie back to the theme ultimately, which is a huge aspect of this show in the first place. Better for It 2020. What is, each artist's take on what's going on with these situations that we're all having to sort of deal with. So I think that each work and each artist is extremely unique, which made discussions with Marcus quite interesting, going back and forth. I think that the process of art curating is definitely a multi-step process. It is so much more than just looking at each work once. I think that it was several hours, several days going back and forth to sort of look at each work with a fresh eye every time and seeing, what are those things that sort of stick out to me that didn't the first time? What are those things that are jumping off the canvas that didn't the first time? And ultimately, how am I feeling closer to the artist is what I'm looking for ultimately. How do I feel closer to the artist at the end of the day? What does this work make me feel? And so I think that each piece sort of offered something very visually interesting to the eye. There are some works that the colors and forms sort of make your eye dance from one thing to the next. Some works really draw your eye in and focus in on one single subject. And I think others sort of create a lot of visible tension within the eye, within the brain. And so there's sort of something for everyone here tonight, and I really hope that you all enjoy. Again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Marcus, for letting me co-curate with you. And yeah, everyone enjoy the show.
Thank you so much, Meg. As Meg mentioned, it was a very in-depth process to curate from such a dynamic pool of artists with such distinct experiences. We gathered 6 artists and teams for the show tonight. And I can't wait any longer to show you, so let's hop right in. The first artist tonight is my good friend Bree, who is a pioneer when it comes to sustainability and how the environment relates to the human experience. She graduated from the Savannah College of Art and Design in May with a BFA in Fibers and Textiles, and now lives in Boulder, Colorado. Here's our conversation.
My name is Bree. I'm from Boulder, Colorado, born and raised. I went to SCAD with Marcus, and I got my BFA in fibers, so textile design, but not really limited to just textiles. I do a whole bunch of different things. I like weaving, sewing, the project that I'll be talking about today, making paper, ceramics, a little bit of everything. So the project that you all are seeing behind me here is called Pandemic Papers. And it is a project that I started right at the beginning of our COVID quarantine. So March 15th or so. And I read this article by trend forecaster Lee Idlecourt. And she wrote this paper that she talked about the quarantine being a blank page for a new beginning. And talking about how like the space of the quarantine was just gonna like open the door for a lot of new possibilities. And she published this article in seriously the first week of the quarantine. And it's super interesting to look back on it now, having lived through COVID for 3 or 4 months, and just think about like the ways in which she was right, and then the ways in which like this kind of quarantine has shaped our like new beginning, and the way we've like seen that start to unfold through just a lot of the like unrest happening in our country and the Black Lives Matter movement and some of these other things. But in her paper, she talks about how what we're entering into is like this quarantine of consumption. Like we couldn't go out to the stores and purchase things like we normally would and like we're comfortable doing, and we have to like really reconsider like what we think makes our lives like beautiful and wonderful. And so I started thinking about like the ways people kind of were being crazy at the beginning of this, like buying a bunch of toilet paper or like just like irrational shopping, and kind of how that reflects like how we normally purchase things anyways. And so I started like collecting all these like receipts and other papers from my roommates and friends through the first like 2 or so weeks of the quarantine, and I kind of like laid them all out and was thinking about like what each thing was. Like, okay, I bought groceries, or this was, you know, this like new cycling kit that I bought because I am going to ride my bike more now that I have all this time, or whatever else it was. And then I shredded all my receipts and I made them into new paper, which is what I called the pandemic paper, and that's what this is. And you can kind of see in here like the flex of all the different pieces coming together. And when I like made this paper and I looked at it, I was like, it needs to be like something else. It like didn't feel fully finished yet. So that's where like these came in. And these pieces represent the transition. So this one is like entirely receipt paper here. And then on the other end, it's almost entirely pandemic paper. And the pieces in between demonstrate this transition where I'm like starting to incorporate like pieces of pandemic paper with the receipts. So the transition of like our old consumption and habits to this like new way of thinking post-pandemic. I think that, like I was talking about before, like the idea of this being like a quarantine of consumption, it really made people consider, particularly at first when we were locked at home, like, okay, what is actually important to my life and what isn't so important, and what am I investing all my time and energy in that's not important. I, in the last like 6 months or so, become particularly interested in this idea of intersectional environmentalism, which is basically the idea that environmental practices that harm the planet like disproportionately affect people of marginalized communities. And so I think that's something that we can see as well, like through this COVID pandemic, is kind of just like the coming to light of these injustices and like the way that they affect marginalized communities more than other communities. And there's kind of this juxtaposition of like these beautiful things happening where it's like we're not out as much, and so like our carbon emissions are lower and like places in the planet are healing. But then we're also seeing kind of the effects of like people who aren't as privileged as we might be in America, or as you might be in your house, like how the pandemic has affected them differently. And I think both of those things are really important. And I would say like the biggest thing is just COVID has like allowed people to pause and like reflect on those things and be like, wow, like these things are good and this isn't good, and how do I navigate what I think about that, which I think is super important. I think it's really important to recognize like the fight for the planet isn't just for like, I mean, of course I love the planet, I love the mountains, I'm very invested in the environment, but I think like realizing that it's a privilege to get to spend time in the environment, and like it's not just about the planet. Like when I'm fighting for something like, you know, lower gas emissions or companies to be wiser about like the way they're disposing of chemicals, it really is because it impacts those people who live near those facilities, or people who don't have access to like air filters as easily and things like that, and like fighting for them and like their rights. The more I found that it, like I said, it impacts people, and so I see myself as someone who wants to fight for both people and the planet, and like people first and planet second, but they go together. So when you're fighting for people and their rights, you kind of like inversely fight for the planet and the planet's rights, and like same when you're fighting for environmental health, then you're fighting for the health of like these communities and other people. And so I think that those like two things are super important to me in like my practice. And as for like where I'm going next, I like really don't have a specific idea of like this is exactly what I want, which is really exciting because there's a lot of freedom in that statement. I just know that I'm like, I really want to keep fighting for this like health of the people and the planet together, and like how we can improve that, particularly in the textile industry, and the relationship that people have with cloth. Like I think that reminding people of that relationship is super important in making change. And so I want to figure out new and exciting ways to work towards that change and learn from other people to help them and have them help me. So
For our audience, where's a good place to find you?
I have a website, and it's just briost.com, and I'm also on Instagram, and my Instagram is @BrieKeeley. So those are two good spots.
Cool. Sweet. Well, it was great talking to you, Bree. Thank you
Yeah,
so
thanks
much
for having me,
joining us.
Marcus.
Like, just hearing everything that you're thinking about and doing is super inspiring. So
Oh, thank you. I'm really excited to be a part of this with all the other artists who are here. So
totally.
thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Bree. What a great conversation. I loved learning about intersectional environmentalism, how protecting marginalized people is the end goal to protecting our planet. All the art you see tonight is for sale, including Bree's. The price of each work is displayed in the description, and you will have another chance to view all the artwork at the end of the show, as well as inside the Facebook event. Each artist has chosen their own nonprofit to which half the revenue will be donated. If you want to support all of these incredible artists, as well as some fantastic organizations, contact me by emailing marcus@delmar.org. Next is another recent graduate from the Savannah College of Art and Design. Livy Barrett graduated in May with a BFA in painting and just recently moved to Brooklyn to pursue her career in fine arts. I loved having the opportunity to have this conversation with Libby, as I've been following her practice even before COVID, and her motif and intentions have only become more relevant in this current cultural moment. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Libby. Hey Libby, how's it going?
Hey, I'm good, Marcus. How are you?
Good, so good to see you, and thanks for hopping on this call.
Of course. Yeah, I'm super excited about this.
Totally. Well, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience, who you are, where you're from?
Yes. Okay, I'm Libby Barrett. I'm from Tyler, Texas.
A lot of your practice is concerned with rest. When and how did you develop that motif and this visual kind of identity of the chair?
Yeah, so back in about 2018, I got to go to France, and I was in a weird phase of, it was beginning my junior year of college at SCAD, and I kind of felt like I didn't really have direction. At that point, I was a painting major, and so I felt like I just was pretty lost in my inspiration, and I just was crying out to God and asking him, like, what do I need to make? Like, a lot of things that year also had fallen through and kind of just dissolved in my life. And so I was reconsidering my identity and just figuring out what even inspired me. And so I went to France, and I found so much inspiration, of course, but I was looking around in all the small villages, and I just noticed all these like very old chairs or just beautiful design chairs, and it just one of those random things that struck my eye, and it wasn't for any specific reason except for I think it was being used. Like later on, I feel like the meaning came, but my professor just said, you know what, you just need to start drawing those chairs, like just draw them. And I was like, no one's ever told me to just draw, like that just seems too simple. And so I started drawing them, and I just fell in love with that motif for some reason. And I think, like I said, the meaning came later, and the chair is a resting spot for anyone that sits in it. So it became this really cool metaphor in my life, because I felt like up to that point in 2018, I just had been going and going and going and never stopping. And so it was just a gracious, like, basically a gift to rest and like sit there and make sure that I have, I don't know, just space to breathe. And that chair just represents like God's love, God's peace, and like just being able to take in what he's called me to be, and not take in what the world says. And so it's a lot of things, but back in France is when I started it, and it's just still been around.
I'm really curious of how that period of slowing down while you're studying abroad relates to your COVID experience, where all of us collectively have been forced to slow down.
Right.
So what's your experience been like with COVID, and how do you anticipate that to shift your art practice?
Yeah, so it's just so funny that I feel like everything, of course, is timed perfectly and like at the right time. But I feel like, especially now, even with like me graduating this year, like graduated during the pandemic, it just seems like it wasn't a sad thing. It was more just like, okay, like even in those quiet spaces, and even in no one, like you're not getting like that physical recognition or anything, like I still see you, and I still like see your hard work. And I think COVID has been weird because even before it happened, I was actually at home. I took like a quarter off and just spent time at home. I just felt like I needed to, and I had like my credits so I could, and I like made a bunch of work, like a lot of the work that I showed for my senior show, and it was revolving around like faith. And like I was like, why does this word keep coming up in my spirit? And it like just, of course, right then in March, all this stuff started happening. And I really had to have a lot of faith that like, yes, he's gonna get us all through this, but also like just keep going, and like just keep like, even in no one seeing what you're doing, even in, you know, the quiet space, like he sees what you're doing and he's with you. And I think that's super, super important. But also, I don't know, the COVID experience has just been so weird. It's been like an extension of that time that I had, and now I'm back to it. And so yeah, it's good, but it's also like I'm ready for something new, of course. You know, it's hard to sit still is what I'm saying.
I think it's good to hear that from you, someone who makes a lot of art on stillness and rest.
Yeah, and it's really just a reminder to myself, like I am the biggest like advocate because I need to tell myself these things basically. So
That's awesome. Cool. Well, I would love for you to walk us through each of these works that you have. Probably first, let's do To Sit By You.
okay, so this piece I created this year, and so those two chairs I have outside in my porch, and I don't know, those chairs represent like time spent with my family, but I guess mainly because they are from my home, but I think it also just represents like the conversations I've had with my parents, or even just my family, like one-on-one, and how those have impacted me. Like maybe I'll have that conversation and then 3 months later think about something that happened and be like, oh my gosh, like I needed that spoken to me to get to where I am right now. And so the two chairs just represent like conversation, and I think just a sharing between two people, and having that space and light and wisdom and all those things in that space.
Let's talk about producing the most of this time.
Okay, that one is probably the most ironic, obviously, because I actually made it before, it was like right before this all happened. It was in like February, and a lot of my work, it's either, I would say it's like it's never structured. So when I create something, it's going to be based on either just something I've seen, or I took a picture that day and I was like, wow, why is this standing out to me? And that day it was just this one specific chair, and then obviously like fruit. And fruit has been a big symbol in my work as well. Just, you know, fruit can symbolize so many things, but just what's being produced in your life. And I think, you know, bananas actually go bad really quickly. So you have to like really, I mean, you have to first pick them at the right time, wait till they ripen, blah, 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 blah. But it really, you have to wait for that fruit to be grown. You can't just make it, it's not going to be immediate. And I think, I don't know, the chair resting is not going to be immediate. Like you're going to have to force yourself kind of to sit there, and it's going to be a growing practice and process. And yeah, it's not going to be hard. It's not going to be easy, but I think it's definitely worth it in the end. It'll produce a lot in your life. So that's kind of what that one's about.
Totally. I love that. Yeah, I'd also love to hear a little bit about like your like technique. Like you have like a lot of textures, you have a lot of different mediums going on. None of them watercolor, even though these like all feel very like light, like you would expect from a watercolor stuff.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, I like things that are very like quick and easy for me to layer, and so acrylic is my go-to, but I've also been really into gouache lately, and that also is a great like matte texture. But I feel like the immediacy in a lot of my work is why I make what I make. Like drawing something, it seems like kind of quick, but like you're drawn to it because everyone kind of draws like those simple drawings. And I think like a line, you know, the line is so important to my work because it's simple, and I want like the work to speak for itself basically. And so in most of those pieces, like I want the washes to be like an environment or like just like either warm or cool or just something that reminds you of something else. And I don't want to give the viewer too much because I think they should decide like what that makes them think of or experience or what they've experienced. But I think it gives an environment like those washes and different textures. Makes you think of other things basically. So
Yeah, I love that. They're almost like little auras happening around them.
yeah.
All right, let's talk about Free Always.
Okay, Free Always was fun because that was actually a picture that was sent to me from my sister in New York. She lives in Brooklyn. And of course, she finds like so many chairs on the side of the street just sitting there. And she took a picture one day and sent it to me. And I was like, wow, of course, this is something I need. This is something I need to paint. Like, it's great. It had a sign on it that said free. I was like, this seems really relevant. I don't know why, but I need to paint this. And so I did. And I don't know. I think I'm still figuring out why I'm attracted to these free chairs that are discarded and thrown away, but they almost represent like people to me or like the figure. And so when I see a discarded chair, I'm like, wow, like that someone sat there. There was like some memory attached to that and they're just like leaving it there. And I think, I don't know, it's just kind of like a fun discovery or like treasure hunt in a way. And so like, you know, there's free gifts to be like taken and you can find them and take pictures. And I don't know, it's kind of self-explanatory, but I like the backstory behind it.
What's next for your art practice, for your life?
Yeah, so I mean, in a week I'm moving to Brooklyn, so I'll be a New Yorker, moving in with my sis, which will be great. I'm so excited. And it'll be, of course, different with everything going on right now, but I think it's just such a great opportunity as well. Like, of course, just being in a new space and also just still finding those like things to discover, things to go out and find on my walks and, you know, take pictures of and like think of. And, you know, this time has given us so much space to think. And I think when we have no direction, that's a perfect opportunity for us to find the direction that we want to go. And I think having that like mindset of like, okay, like I'm not going to have any expectations. I'm not going to like tell myself what I need to do or like what I need to make. I'm just going to like go out there and like, I think I'm just going to like treasure hunt or like I'm going to look around and like I think something will pop out. And I think that brings so much like growth in anyone's work. And so that's what we've been doing. I feel like all been doing recently. And so I'll just be doing more of that. But as far as like my physical work, I think I'll do more portable things. So like pastels and just like paperwork. I think that's like my next step, but also like really been into abstract lately because I feel like just the weight of everything, like it almost feels like I can't do anything pictorial or anything with subject matter because only like I want the work to speak for itself. And I think abstract has a way of doing that without me putting anything on it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that makes me think of like World War II and post World War II like painters. That's
right. Yeah. I'm excited though.
Yeah. Oh my God, I'm so excited for you. I mean, all the free chairs that there are in New York. So
that might be a whole new series, of course. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm so here for it. Cool. Well, thank you so much for talking. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about you?
Oh, okay. So my website is my name, libbybarrett.com, and Instagram is also my name. Yeah, email me, whatever you want to do to contact. Just let me know.
Totally. Sweet. Well, thanks, Libby.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Libby. Your work is so timely, light, and inspiring. I wish you all the best in Brooklyn. Next is Hudson, a photographer and visual artist based out of Sydney, Australia. When the pandemic started and live events were canceled, Hudson started to pivot away from photographing concerts and developed a studio practice. But then, when Black Lives Matter protests started occurring in Australia with emphasis on native Aborigines peoples, he had the opportunity to merge these two mediums. Here's my conversation with Hudson. What's up, Hudson? How you doing?
I'm good. Kind of cold, but pretty good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Could you tell everyone where you are in the world and who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I'm currently based in Sydney, Australia, and I'm a photographer slash visual artist, mainly due to coronavirus. That's where I've been exploring more of the visual arts.
Could you tell me what the Black Lives Matter experience is like in Australia? Could you describe what the protests and the messaging were like?
Yeah, so it's very different from what the US is doing right now. Like, it's a honestly, I think we've actually been working with the police to have these protests, which is a strange correlation with the Black Lives Matter movement. But we're getting across the message that Black Lives Matter, and especially with Australia right now, we're including within the Black Lives Matter movement the lives of Aboriginal communities in Australia, because they were here before us, and there's a huge history of police violence or prison violence towards local Aboriginals more so than anyone else. And so we can easily relate to the Black Lives Matter movement because we've seen racism within our own communities as well. And it's been very different because we're not the United States. We have different people here, different lives that have been lost here, but it's still all under the same idea, under the same pretense that there is discrimination going on based on skin color or heritage, and that we need to recognize that and grow from that. So
I love that. Yeah. How has this kind of exploration of these political ideas been a continuation of your practice before, and what's different about it?
well, I always was, well, no, I actually wasn't always political. I never really dug politics much. I was like, oh, people can vote, I'm just gonna like watch, because I never grew up around the United States politics. But I grew up with I grew up in Hong Kong, and we've had a bunch of political stuff happening there at this moment. And so it started in 2014 with the original Umbrella movement, or Umbrella Revolution as we called it. And that saw major road blockages for months, and protests and people getting arrested, people like fighting back tear gas with umbrellas. And I originally went to that protest, and I just kind of took artsy photos because I was young at the time and I didn't really understand what was happening. And then I looked back at that, and I was like, it sounds kind of weird saying it this way, but I was always like, I wish something happened that I could document now with my knowledge now, rather than what I did before, which is kind of making an excuse to skip school and hang out in abandoned roads and stuff. But now I was able to have the chance to document a huge event in the world, and document it from a different perspective than most people get. And so it was like almost an honor to be there for that, and see how I see it differently now rather than before, and be able to capture.
I love that. And me knowing your practice, I mean, I've been following you, I don't know, probably for like 5 or 6 years now on like social media. I feel like this is like an interesting like convergence of like all your photography work you've done, and also like all the visual arts you've done. And it's like converged in this multimedia sort of situation that also like feels like documentary photography, but also like its own like picket fence sign. Yeah, do you want to speak at all to like your medium and your process?
Yeah, well, I actually never really did much visually besides photography, because it's easy to pick up a camera and take photos. But when coronavirus hit, I was out of luck. I couldn't go to concerts anymore because my main thing is music photography and that sort of thing. But with coronavirus happening, I was stuck at home for weeks. Concerts have been canceled left, right, center. And I had to figure out a new way to express myself through art. So I did paintings and drawings and just tried new things and just played around with it. And then when the protests happened and I got those photos, I was like, okay, I want to make something meaningful that represents the message, not just through photos. Because the photos, I think they do a great job at conveying it, but I was like, let's just spice it up a little bit, which is as simple as writing phrases from people's signs over the photos.
I've seen your practice transition a lot from coronavirus, and then this is like even more. I mean, where do you anticipate your practice going next after this?
Well, I'm still trying to figure that out myself. I'm still going to do photography. I was supposed to be having a third exhibition around this time right now of my photo work, but that's been completely scrapped, and I'm like thinking about whether I do that again or if I should do something different and continue with my different ways of expressing myself through paintings, drawings, and stuff, and incorporate that into a new show or something like that. It's very unknown. I have no clue, but I'll be writing down ideas and stuff and figuring it out as I go.
Totally. Yeah, that unknown is like kind of exciting. I'm like in the exact same boat. Everything's
Yeah,
good.
it's a good space. It's so good because it's like you're free. You're not like held back by things you've done before, and it's like you get to try something new and different, and it gives you room to step out of what you usually do.
Totally. Where can people find you?
I'm on Instagram under Huddo, HVDDO.
Well, thanks for talking to us, Hudson.
Of course, anytime.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Hudson. I love the unique perspectives of racial justice you have from Australia. Next is Hannah Alsdorf, a studio artist based in Albany, New York. She graduated from the Savannah College of Art and Design in 2019 with a BFA in painting and has continued her practice through COVID, while utilizing historic motifs from Christian and Judeo art history. Here's my conversation with her. Hey Hannah, how's it going?
Hey Marcus, how are you?
Good. Thank you so much for meeting with me. Okay, where are you in the world right now? Tell me that.
Okay, right now I am north of Albany and south of Saratoga Springs, New York. It's where I grew up, and I'm in the house that I was raised in. So since being back home, one of the things that I've really been reconsidering in my work is just being very honest about my background and where I'm from, both the good parts and the things that I want to distance myself from. And so I was raised in an evangelical Christian background, charismatic. So a lot of how I've perceived the world and also through my work has been through that lens, for good and for bad. I was also raised in, for a period of time, in the Messianic Jewish congregation. So those I would say would probably be the biggest like influences in the kind of work that I'm making. I also come from a design background. So my dad is a general contractor and my mom is a florist by trade and a interior decorator and home stager. So thinking about materials that I use that come from that kind of background, be it plywood or construction material or like wallpaper or house paint or those types of things that I was very, in contact with and that translates over into my fine artwork.
Could you walk us through each of the works that you submitted?
Yeah. So the term vanitas is a Latin word. It means empty. It was used as a form of still life art that emerged during the 17th century and was very prominent in the Netherlands and in Dutch art, which is something that I'm art historically quite drawn to. I also am from an area where there's a lot of Dutch heritage. So that kind of like connection, like loose connection to that in an origin sort of sense, and then my personal liking to it. But Vanitas paintings were a moral or like a rigid moral type of painting that was supposed to illustrate the shortness or fragility of life and kind of the transience of life, and also the certainty of death and the futility of pleasure. So it's a very kind of rigid, like I said, moral form of making art. And also still life painting became so saturated that it became passé. So it was kind of like, oh, okay, this is just like another still life painting, another freaking painting of flowers. Like, you know, it's impressive. The work was impressive technically, but it just became kind of passé. So I think for me, that like religious connection was interesting as well. And then also, you know, I work in a floral, like the floral theme is very prevalent throughout all of my work. So there was that connection. And then I think from a spiritual perspective, you know, if I'm speaking about that, you know, we're living in a very tenuous time where, you know, people are dying and around the world from a pandemic. So, you know, you're faced with morality right in front of you. But also too, I think where I stray from this type of idea of like a moral painting is that, you know, we should be enjoying the things that are happening now too. Like, you only, I hate to say it, but like YOLO, I mean, you're only living once. Like, you know, you do want to enjoy those things, like even though they are so delicate, intent, like they could pass at any point. So I think in that sense, I kind of stray away from that moral aspect. And it's not, I wouldn't consider my work a moral work. More of me just kind of questioning these morals that have shaped my own life from an early age. So that I'm quite interested in pursuing this continuation of like Vanitas paintings and what that looks like. So the work really is just kind of a loose study off of those types of paintings. The bottom surface is a doily, so like the lace doily that you could get at like a dollar store, you know. So it's me kind of like trying to mimic these rich paintings through, you know, acrylic, where it would have been oil or tempera, and, you know, like cheap materials to kind of recreate this thing that like I can't recreate. So, and in my like 21st century mind. So,
all right, let's talk about Lilies and Milk.
Yeah. So, I was talking earlier about how literature is pretty, has been pretty important to me as far as abstract concepts. So in literature, you see, you know, like metaphors, you know, written metaphors, and how that can set up certain things in the novel, you know, connections for like red herrings or symbolism, or, you know, one of those things. Like, that's what I love The Great Gatsby for that reason, because there's so much in there that it can offer. But this particular piece came from a piece by Jack Kerouac, who's one of my favorite authors, wrote On the Road. And it's an excerpt from his longer piece called the Mexico City Blues. And it comes from the 228th chorus, where I'll just read this stanza for you because I have it here. But it says, "Praise be man, he is existing in milk and living in lilies, and his violin music takes place in milk and creamy emptiness. Praised be the unfolded inside petal, flesh of the tenderest thoughts." And it goes on and on. But the whole work, it reads almost like a psalm in pre-verse. So like, I don't know in this piece particularly, but I know in On the Road, he wrote the whole thing without any kind of punctuation or line separations or paragraph separations. It was all just stream of conscious. So again, these kind of symbolism, for me, I'm connecting to it in a, Judeo-Christian sort of way. The lilies, the milk. He also mentions honey at some point. So immediately I'm going to all of these things in my, archive of ideas, and have those come from it. Certainly they could have, that kind of inspiration. So I think with the painting, you have the lilies, you have the milk, you have kind of this ambiguous, androgynous figure. And there's loose connections to those things. Like you recognize it as a figure, or you recognize the milk, or you recognize the lily, but there's enough of all of those things unfinished for your mind to kind of come to a conclusion, which I think is a lot of the reason why I keep much of my work unfinished in a sense, or underdeveloped, because I want people to be able to enter the work in their own way. I think if I over explained everything, it's like, this is what it is, and this is how you have to connect to it, and you have absolutely no other way to do that, which I think on a spiritual level too, is very limiting for somebody who doesn't come from my background or even my religious beliefs at all. They're not gonna, if I already assign all those things to it, then they're gonna have no idea where I'm coming from. So I think to keep a lot of it loose has been pretty important for me.
Are there any places that people can find out more about you?
Sure. I have a website that I faithfully try to update every day. So that would be my first and last name, hannahelsdorf.com. If you're interested in seeing what I'm working on, what I have worked on, or on my Instagram account that I try to show up on, and give people kind of a view, not only the work I'm making, but like kind of the things I'm encountering daily that kind of inform that practice. So if they want to engage with that, they are more than welcome to.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Hannah. I loved hearing how much history, intention, and nuance goes into your practice. Next is Kaylin, another artist here in Austin, Texas. She graduated from the University of Texas Hook'em this May with a BFA in painting. Her work is largely concerned with places and their relationship to our psyche. Hey, Kaylin, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Awesome. Well, I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so excited to talk to you today about your freaking amazing art. I'm just freaking obsessed with it. So I guess we'll just hop right in. How did your artistic style develop? And what motifs and ideas are you especially interested in across your practice?
So I guess like my artistic style kind of developed throughout college. I kind of started experimenting with like brush strokes and like playing with color, but it's definitely developed over these past 4 years while I've been at UT. I've had some really great professors who have pushed me like so hard and have like taught me so many different techniques, but also gave me a lot of like artistic liberty and freedom with, I guess, what I'm doing and like the kind of stuff I'm creating, and taught me like color skills and stuff like that. I'd say like, I guess it's developed the most this past year, which is like kind of shows through Magic Mountain and the other painting at home. I'm just like trying to, I guess, like dive into I guess how like surrealism, but also realism kind of can come into play with my art. So yeah.
I love that. Sweet. It's so good. And could you talk about each of your works at home and Magic Mountain?
Yeah. So at home is my most recent painting. I finished it. Um, and it was like a project for class, but also like my teacher was very like gave us like liberty to do whatever we wanted, but also wanted us to keep in mind like our current situation with having to go online for class, and that's how I ended my senior year. But I mean, I guess it's fine now looking back. It did give me a lot of, I guess, like ideas, make others feel happy and kind of stuff like that. But mostly wanted to bring in the outdoors inside and kind of merge those two together, because most of my other works this year have been revolving around interior spaces and kind of like the mentality of like what your psyche like in terms of your interior spaces and what you're most comfortable with. But also I feel very comfortable in nature, and I wanted to merge those two together, especially since like we can't go out as often as we want to anymore. And my other painting, Magic Mountain, I did that, I believe, sometime in 2019. I think it was earlier this year, actually. My timeline is super messed up right now. But that one was the first one I did using that kind of style. And it was basically just kind of me breaking out of my comfort zone, because most time I just do portraits and stuff like that. And that was like my first or nature painting, but also it's not very realistic, and which is what I love about it. And it kind of just allowed me to figure out a new way to express my art and also play with color. And
Yeah, totally. I mean, between both the paintings, I am just so obsessed with the way you use color, and then your brush stroke is like both like watery, but also like a little transient. It's just, I'm obsessed with it. It's so good. Yeah. And then I guess last, how has COVID affected your practice? What are you learning, and what do you think you're going to take away, and how it's going to affect your practice in the future?
It's a great question. A lot of things have been changing, and also like time has been moving like super fast, and I have like zero ability to get a grip on anything. But I think like I am like being flooded with a lot of ideas right now, just with like maybe lack of resources, because like not all the art stores are open in order for me to get my stuff. And also like kind of me figuring out how I can sell things, which is kind of like, I don't know. Also, I like just graduated from UT, so it's also, that's a new transition period for me. I'm like trying to figure out how to be an artist in like the contemporary art field right now, especially in Austin. And I'm thinking like of ideas, I guess, of little things that I can maybe sell, more commercial, I guess. But overall, I guess it's been inspiring me, and it's been giving me a lot of new ideas. It's just, what do I do first with all the time that I have, kind of thing. So
Yeah. Gosh, I totally get that. Like, yeah, I like hopping in the art world in the middle of pandemic is not fun. And you're just like, how do I make this freaking profitable? I don't even know. Yeah, for sure. I get that. Well, thank you so much for talking. Is there anything else you'd want to say? Yeah.
I guess like for everyone like watching, I guess this time's super difficult. And like if you're able to find anything that brings you a little bit of joy, whether that's just like looking at art or making art, or not even anything to do with art, I feel like everyone should just do it. Like make sure to like spend time with people, even if it's over the phone. I think that's super important. It can inspire you, can push you to go do new things and make new things, even if it's not like good, doesn't really matter. So
For sure. Cool. And where can people find you? Like, what are your platforms?
So I have a website right now, but also I'm very more active on my art Instagram. That Instagram is Kaylin_Jade_. And also my website is kaelyn.com. It's KAELYN.com. And then you can also find my Instagram through there. So yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kaylin. I am so blown away by the way you use color and texture. Last is Carter and Prince, who worked together to produce a short film called What If? Here's our conversation. Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey, what's up, Marcus?
Good to see y'all. Dude, I am stoked to see your film, What If? Do y'all want to just give a little introduction before we hop into it?
Sure. Prince, you wanna do that?
That's all you, bro.
Okay. Well, Prince and I a few weeks ago made a little film called What If, and it was pretty spontaneous. We had, kind of talked about it a little bit before, but we had really been wanting to make something together, and this quarantine lockdown situation kind of provided the perfect time to kind of come together and do that. And so we decided to make kind of a poetic experimental film about a kid who's moved to a new city, Nashville, and he kind of starts to realize that there's more to the city than meets the eye. And yeah, I think that should be a good intro to
Totally.
whatever.
Yeah, well, let's hop into the film.
Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door. Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door. Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door.
Are you okay?
Man, I'm supposed to be meeting this dude. It's always the same thing with this guy, man. It's whatever, though. It's not like he's done this before. I thought moving here would be different, you know? I don't even know anymore, man.
You okay? It's hot out here. Maybe you should go home. Do some job searching.
Nah. I had plans to explore the city, man. I think I'm gonna still do that.
Samara, be careful. Downtown, Nashville, it's a weird place. These shadow people come out. My first week was crazy, man.
I don't know what you're talking about, man, but I think I'll be all right.
I'm serious, bro. Like legend has it, shadow people come for the first week that you move here. It's serious.
Man, that's just talk, man. I don't believe that. That's crazy.
I have work at 1, so I really gotta go. I'm sorry about your dad.
It's all right, man. You be safe, bro.
Sorry about your dad. I hope this camera makes up for it. There's more to Nashville than what you see.
What if ghosts were real?
Hey, kid.
Come on, come on! What if you had superpowers? What if the moon melted? What if you were moving the solar system with your mind that night?
Cool. That was an awesome film, guys. Okay, bouncing off of that, I would love, I guess, first to hear like the narrative and what informed like that whole story.
I was like, how do we start, basically? And we're like, all right, let's go and just each like think about 5 images each, and we'll come back and talk about them. And I think some of Carter's 5 images were just super powerful.
and I had some ideas about I did some research about the bridge that, and then Carter was like, yeah, the bridge. And then he was like, what about some other places, the park, and he really wanted to shoot at as well. And kind of that's was the genesis of that. Then we started thinking about, we're like, hey, let's do some writing the next week. And we started doing some writing and to kind of filtrate those images to help sustain the images. I think that's kind of how we were going about it.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of describing it. Prince started, like I asked him about kind of like what writings that he had been doing or things that were on his mind, and he started to like expand on, I mean, a bunch of different stories that he was working on. Like there was, we knew that like the supernatural element was something important about it, and like, I mean, I might be attributing to something that I maybe subconsciously thinking about at the time, but like, and the city it's attached to, sort of like the notion of powers and like good and evil working on us and interrupting and affecting, you know, something that's going on in our lives, and things like that. And we wanted to dive into, okay, like, what does it visually look like to be bored? And like, what quirks about this character can we bring forward? Like, oh, he wants superpowers. And so we kind of dive into his imagination, and he's pretending to be Marvel superheroes like the Hulk, and he's just passing time trying to, you know, keep his boredom at bay. And he ends up, you know, and it's debatable whether the scenario is really real or not, or whether he's imagining it, but he finds a camera washed up at the river, and it ends up giving him a look into an alternate dimension, like another realm that he can't see with the naked eye. And I think that was kind of like, that was kind of the basis for the what ifs that are kind of strung throughout, is like, you know, just thinking like how your mind wanders, and like he's thinking of superpowers. So he's like, what if I could do this? What if this was real? What if this? That probably sprang up from what Prince was talking about the ribbon, and that never came into the film, which the ribbon for me was, it was a silver ribbon, and it represented hope. It represented the possibilities of things and stuff. And so those what ifs kind of replaced the ribbon, this pulling of this like heavenly divine ribbon for things to happen, sort of. I think that was really important for me, is like, this kid is in what seems like kind of a sad, hopeless situation in a new, not familiar with, and that his imagination gives him hope and a way to deal and cope with his situation, I guess.
Awesome. I love that. I had a question. Okay. Yeah, I just gave it. And this is probably the last question I'll ask y'all,
Okay.
But like, you guys are really interested, it seems like, with not so much the things that are visual, which is hilarious because that's what filmmaking is like the visual story, but you're very concerned with like consciousness and also the supernatural. I think like, I want to know like what draws you to those, what intrigues you about exploring these other worlds that we don't inhabit in like a visual sense.
Well, me and Carter are believers in Jesus Christ, and just the text of the Bible is like filled with these different realms. Most holy scriptures are filled with, you know, from the Buddhist texts to they're filled with these other worlds, and so And we believe that there's another world. So just being conscious of that and trying to communicate that, I think a lot of it goes from that.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think speaking for myself, in most of my films, the notion of the mystic is like really important to me and intriguing, and like film as a medium, like taking the mystical and putting it into visuals that somehow can bring the viewer into some sort of emotional understanding or visual understanding of what that might look like or be like, I think is really important to me. And just kind of, yeah, I mean, I think that it's as simple as that, whatever that form takes in a story, whether it's a part of the main plot or not, whether it's just an aesthetic or a setting or whatever element of the film that resides in, like, I think that it's important for me to have that mystical element represented in my work.
Cool. Well, thank you guys so much. Like, this film rocks. I'm so stoked that we got to share it with everybody. So thank you so much, guys. Real quick, where can people find you? Like Instagram, websites, anything?
Prince.
Yeah, you can find me at Prince the Artist. So Prince THEE Artist on Instagram, and also if you just type that into Google, it'll take you right to my website, princetheartist.com.
You can find me on Instagram at Magic Pinto. My website is my name, cartermagipinto.com, but I'm still working on that. It should be up soon. But yeah, those are the two main places right now.
Cool. Well, thank you guys so much. So glad I got to talk to you. That film was phenomenal, and I loved hearing about Prince and Carter's companionship and process of creating the film. Again, thank you so much for joining in on the virtual experience of Better For It. Thank you so much to Meg Venkatesh for co-curating this with me. And thank you to all the artists who entered the show. I had a blast getting to know you and interview all of you. Remember, if you want to buy any of the artwork you saw tonight, email me at marcus@delmar.work. And don't worry if you don't remember, all the available art will be shown at the conclusion of this stream. And that about does it for me from my garage. My name is Marcus Clark, and you can find me on Instagram at delmar.clark or my studio online at delmar.work. Thank you so much, and remember that the best is yet to come. Just hold on to hope.